out the way just to help my position.
Out this world
Go out the way just to help my position. When I was broke, I just knew I would get it. That hate shit you want ain't no good for my spirit. It is what it is, I got tired of forgiving. Mouth full of ghost crackers smiling and glisten. Out with the old, my phone jumping this Wednesday. Knew I was special, just needed to listen. Lift up a latch and detaching the ceiling. Super Dushani, the motherfucking greatest. This my new rental, don't care, I drag racing. In your apartment, I'm popping the latest. Started finessing, so that's how we played it. Stepped envelopes, got it right on my brothers. No competition, we shine with each other. So many nights had my mind in the gutter. Mama told me like, boy, keep it together. Link with a big booty freak, it's whatever. Bet like a ring, we ain't cutting, we wrestle. Call my connect, need a package of pressure. Mind on my money, you know how I'm stepping. Take your advice, but I really ain't need it. You in my presence, 1K, how you keep it? Act like a star so they don't treat me basic. Bills late, niggas start getting creative. Go out the way just to help my position. When I was broke, I just knew I would get it. That hate shit you want ain't no good for my spirit. It is what it is, I got tired of forgiving. Mouth full of ghost crackers smiling and glisten. Out with the old, my phone jumping this Wednesday. Knew I was special, just needed to listen. Lift up a latch and detaching the ceiling. Super Dushani, the motherfucking greatest. It's my new rental, don't care, I just race it. In your apartment, I'm popping the latest. Started for Uncle Hercules. He is in the building.
1 2 1 2. Can you hear me? Good.
Yes, sir.
What's going on, bro?
How everything going, man? I can't call it, man. It's the weekend.
You doing that album? You doing the album drop tonight?
No, I'm doing I got a album listening party. Basically, I'm dropping my album in 3 days. I'm gonna let everybody listen to it tonight.
Okay. You doing you going to a club?
Nah, a little event center.
Okay. That's what's up, yo. That's all right.
Uncle Hercules. Uncle Hercules, man. How we feeling today?
I'm all right, man. It's been a long week. It's been a long week, man. So I'm glad to be home, chilling, relaxing, yo. So just dealing with these kids, man. It's rough sometimes. It's rough.
Sure, man. Full-time job, huh?
Man, it's crazy, man. I don't know, man. I told the kids the other day, man. I said, man, y'all make me depressed, man. They was like, what the hell? How we make you depressed? Like, cause like, man, it's like y'all don't want to learn. I never met a group of kids that just don't want to learn. You against learning this shit, man. These kids nowadays, man. I don't know what's up with them, man. So I try to focus on, I focus on the ones that do want to learn. You know what I'm saying? Just do what you can, Right. Just keep it moving. So right. That's how I be.
Hey man, I'm getting comments. I'm getting comments. I'm getting pushback. I'm getting everybody's opinion, man. They like, man, what the hell is white science?
I know, man. I know it's going to be, yo, and that's the crazy thing. It's almost like almost a difficult subject to understand, because for real, it took me till now to actually understand it. I said it probably took me the last 20 years, 25 years, to understood what our elders was talking about. You know what I'm saying? So it's real. People, when you think of it, like, nah, man, it's no such thing. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we're gonna get into it, yo. We're gonna get into it. I'm gonna explain it, and I just hope I'm clear. I hope my message is clear. You know what I'm saying? For everybody. And got a drink.
Okay.
We
Let me go get my Arizona tea.
We're gonna get into it. So if you're ready, I can go ahead and I start. Get this done.
Let's get this money. Hey man, we got Uncle Hercules in the building, man. He about to put it down like no other. So I need everybody to like, share, and subscribe. Get your popcorn, get your blunts rolled, pour your drink up like Uncle Hercules is. We about to get down to this information. Um, is we going viral tonight? You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of controversy off of what Uncle Hercules is saying. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? If you got a problem with it, nigga, step up. Black
Word,
power.
word, 100, 100. All right, you ready?
Yeah, you just gotta hit the present when you're ready.
Yeah, let me go. I'm gonna start off like Lucifer. I'm gonna bust this lyric real quick. Come and flow, high, hot. No, I'm just playing. Just playing. I'll leave that to Lucifer. Yo, was Joshua, right? His name is Joshua, right?
Yashu.
Yeah, Yashu. Yeah. I'll leave the rap introduction to him. Yo, that ain't my style. I can't do it. All right. What's going on, fam? Hercules here. So I guess say my background mathematics. I'm a mathematician, even though even though today, the other day I heard them guys say, you ain't no mathematician, you ain't a scientist unless you got a PhD. You know what I'm saying? Unless you got your mind, whatever, nigga.
Whatever, nigga. We don't need that cracker degree.
Whatever, nigga. Yeah, so man, my degree is in mathematics. Operations research was my concentration. And I grew up Washington, D.C. area. And growing up, my dad forced us to listen to John Henry Clark, Marie McAney, Francis Cress Welsing, Ivor Sertima. When I turned, I think 13 or 14, my dad, he forced me to read. He made me read that the book. What was the name of that joint? African People and European Holidays. Every day I came home from school, I was required. He said, "Yo, you gotta read this book at least, for 1 hour." And that's how I guess I got introduced to being so-called, woke or conscious. That lay it down the door. So anyway, tonight, I just want to do a presentation on white science, black science versus white science, and we're going to get into this, talk about the difference. Is there a difference? All right. So the notion that science is universal has been one of the hallmarks of white supremacy. It has been one of the most successful ways to spread Eurocentric thought around the world. For this presentation, I want to show that, yes, there is such a thing called white science. We don't usually think of it as white science because most of us have been educated in Western-style schools. So we only see it as science. And it's for everyone because it's universal. That's the education that we came up with. That's what we was presented with. That's what we was told. Now, what I'm presenting tonight is not anything new. A lot of my elders that I'm standing on the shoulders of, they already talked about this, okay? So many of our elders have talked about this before, but it seems that the subject just keeps going over our heads. A lot of our elders have taken the time to correct the racist Eurocentric history, psychological, anthropological, sociological lies that have been told about Black people. However, when it comes to the hard sciences, we stop. We do not investigate whether or not what we were taught about science is correct or true. We just take it as face value. We know they lie about history. They lie to us about the psychological studies of Black people, sociological studies of Black people. But when it comes to science, when it comes to mathematics and all that stuff, we just stop and take it like, yeah, that's right. 2 + 2 is 2. If you take the derivative of x squared, it's going to be 2x in China, and it's going to be 2x in Kenya. But that's not what we're actually talking about when they're talking about white science. We know the cosine of 0 is always going to be 1, no matter if you're in Peru or if you're in Ghana. But that's not what we're talking about. So, what is science? We're told that science is the process of gaining knowledge and investigating by making observations, posing questions, and testing through experimentation. That is science. You're doing scientific research. What is the scientific method? Scientific method is observation, question, hypothesis, experiment, conclusions, and drawing your result. And they say also say it ought to be repeated. People have to be able to repeat your results and stuff like that. Here's a person, I tell you, that person who I did a lot of statistics. I can't stand statistics. Can't stand statistics. But I can tell you, they always manipulate. You can manipulate statistics to make it come out to what you want it to be. And we've seen that in the past. What is pseudoscience? I got this from Science. I could this was Science. I think America.com. Pseudoscience. Climate deniers are accused of participating pseudoscience. Scientists are intelligent design creation, astrologers, UFOlogists, and parapsychologists. I heard them talking about this the other day. Practitioners of alternative medicine, and often anyone who strays far from the scientific mainstream. Sound just like a conspiracy theorist, right? Because if you don't agree with the government, you're a conspiracy theorist, basically. The boundary problem between science and pseudoscience is is notoriously fraught with definitional disagreement because the categories are too broad and fuzzy on the edges, and the term pseudoscience is subject to adjective abuse against any claim one happens to dislike for any reason. If you don't like it, all right, it's pseudoscience. Nah, man, that's pseudoscience, man. I don't like that. That's pseudoscience. What the hell? Just because you don't like it, you disagree with it, then it's pseudoscience. And that's what we see nowadays. That people keep saying, you doing pseudoscience. Just because you disagree with somebody says. I just want to say this. I think it's funny. And I think I said this before, but I think it's funny that the people that they call, they got alternative medicine in here. Remember Dr. Sabi, may rest of the ancestors. I think it's funny that all these people, if you go to an Orthodox doctor and you ask them, hey, what causes autism? They can't tell you. Hey, can you cure autism? They say no. But if you go to an alternative doctor, not only would they tell you what causes autism, they also would tell you how to fucking cure autism. But yet they're pseudoscientists though, right? Whatever. Okay, whatever. It's whatever, yo. But that's pseudoscience, right? It's you're disagreeing with the mainstream. All right, if you're not going along with the orthodox, you're pseudo. Is there white Eurocentric science? Dr. Amos Wilson says yes. The elder says yes. What does Amos Wilson say?
And yet you have classrooms filled with general and introductory psychologists written by white men and women, and think you're learning some neutral, non-political psychology. No such thing as a neutral and non-political psychology. There is no neutral and non-political course in this institution, and I'm talking even about physics, mathematics, and computer science. I heard some joke the other night, there is no black chemistry. There is no black physics. Lies. Because you must understand that chemistry and physics and mathematics and all flows from the consciousness and mind of man. They do not exist apart from that. That science flows from the political and social and economic organization of a people. Science does not pop up in the minds of geniuses. People must exist in a particular political, social, historical context in order for science to develop and to flourish. And unless you know the historical, political context in which science is created and motivated, you will not create science. You will then educate some people who can think in science, and then those same people will be used by your enemies to destroy you and your children.
Facts. Yo, a lot of you guys on here, I hear a lot of people talking, yeah, they read Amos Wilson, yeah, they listen to Amos Wilson. Yeah, you listen, but you ain't following. So yes.
That was powerful. That was powerful, brother. I see this every day with niggas that don't know who they is, niggas don't know what they is. I see this shit every day, man. That was powerful, man. Peace to the ancestors.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. You know what I'm saying? He's telling you, yes. Yes. There's such thing as white science. And there's a difference between white science and black science.
Hey, he just broke it down like, let me say this. What I just took from what he said, what I just took from what Uncle Amos Wilson said, is he basically said that science, that whole high and mighty, that come from their mind. So if we talking about paying bills, if we talking about liberating ourselves from freedom, if we talking about always being on the defense, none of that shit even matter. Who the fuck care about science if you about to go to war? Who the fuck care about science if goddamn you getting shot at? Who the fuck care about science if you about to deliver a goddamn baby? It's been oversaturated, over exaggerated, and we all gotta understand that this come from a mind of a man.
That's right.
Ain't no fucking right answer to most of this shit.
It ain't found on an island, a desert, isolated island in a cave. It was developed by people. So yes.
The same way you niggas like to talk about, oh, black is just a social construct. Nigga, if I get pulled over, I'm going to jail. That's the same way Uncle Amos Wilson just let you niggas know. Nigga, science, the same way you niggas like to say black is a social construct, science is just a social construct, brother. Like it's way more real things in the world that like don't forget it come from a man's mind. Go ahead, Uncle Hercules. That was powerful. I ain't never heard that.
So just people who join in, I'm gonna reiterate. When we say white science, I'm not talking. We don't mean the derivative of x to the third. X to the third derivative is 3x squared. Is different from learning in Kenya than you learn in Zhangguo. It's the same thing. We understand that. That's not what we're saying. Science comes from the mind of man. Men create science. Science was not found on an isolated island in a cave. Discovered with nobody created it. So yes, there is a such thing as white science and black science. Black science, pseudoscience. Said this before last time I was on here, quoting Marshall Clegg from Ancient Egyptian Science, Volume 3. During the 3,000 years of Pharaonic Egypt, there was no natural philosophy or physics that was separated from religion, myth, and magic. So there was no philosophy or physics that was separated from their spirituality. I put the title of this, I labeled this one Black Science is pseudoscience because what they call pseudoscience is our science. But our ancestors, our people we don't refer to it as pseudoscience. It's sacred science. It is the science, it is mathematics combined with spirituality together. It is not separated. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Because I heard them brothers on them pseudo killers. I heard them say, "Oh man, they wasn't using religion, as they advanced." No, dead wrong. Throughout the whole dynasty, the whole period of Kemet, their whole legacy, they use spirituality and science together. sacred science. This is sacred science. A lot of you guys haven't been to any of the traditional rituals. I suggest you go. If you've never been to the motherland, you got to go. If you go, you will see this stuff. Brother sitting in fire. Now, does he have fire retardant clothes on him? I don't know. But you see, he ain't got nothing on his arms, but he's not being burnt. Now, I've been to the motherland. I've lived in Ghana.
Powerful, brother. That's powerful. You going hard. Keep hitting them.
I lived in Ghana. I've been to the rituals. I've seen people, they cut the watermelon, they cut the coconut, and then they took the knife and cut themselves. Or they tried to cut themselves. They didn't cut themselves. Slice it on their arms. No cuts. How do you explain that, bro? Y'all want to sit down and try to explain that? Don't. Just come on, man. Stop it. I'm going to say this. White people cannot do what we do. That's why they label the shit as pseudoscience. All right, let's move on. From the book African-Centered Consciousness, Amos Wilson gives a insight to Gary's thoughts. If the race was to advance, it could not do so clinging to the coattails of its oppressors, or solely on the achievements of a handful of great men and women, no matter how elevated their status or how deep their pockets. If the race was to advance, it could not do so clinging to the coattails of its oppressors. And that's what we are doing. We too busy around here running around, following what white people do. We want to do the same thing that they do. I understand because we grew up in a Western culture. And so we think that white people are more, their techniques are modern and more advanced. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. All right? But that's not going to help us. Riding on their coattails ain't going to help us. And it hasn't helped us. Hasn't helped us. We, you can look at we can go through the past, we can look at it. It hasn't helped us at all. Science and Oppression, Jacob Carruthers. Now, this is a beautiful essay. I recommend you guys download this joint. Find it, you can download it. It is a beautiful essay. Jacob Carruthers, Science Useful to the Oppressed? The first question we must ask is whether and in what way is this methodology useful to us? He's talking about the scientific methodology. Obviously, this is the methodology that increasingly legitimizes the opinions that determine policies in socioeconomic and educational areas. The opinions now influence public policies, especially in the field of education, and widely criticized and to some extent challenged by students using the same scientific methodology. From the vantage point of different biases or assumptions. Thus, one possible use for this methodology is to buffer against undesirable conclusions generated by the abuse of the methodology. That is one possible use. You guys remember the bell curve? I remember the bell curve. Came out when I was in high school. This in itself is a valid reason for its use, provided its limits and properly understood. One problem this poses for us is the usual powerlessness of the challengers and the unwillingness of the controllers of institutions to change or to put down established experts for rebel upstart experts. Another problem is the possibility use of the challenger's opinions to accomplish objectives not intended. For example, the report may be received, shelved, and pulled out 10 years later to respond to a different problem, resulting in an unintended end. Another possible use for this methodology is that it is an effective resource to generate the necessary knowledge for liberation, because it is the only methodology designed to deal with the ills of this system. This use is analogous to the question of modern Western medicine. For example, since Africans today suffer from European diseases, Western medicine must be used for survival. But this kind of use itself does nothing to change the system and may make oppression more perfect. I would push back on that part. On that part, I would push back and say, we don't need Western medicine to cure the diseases. A lot of people like Dr. Sabi, a lot of holistic medicine people have shown, you can cure these Western diseases with a lot of holistic herbs and healing and stuff like that. Continuing. What has stood in the way of using collective wisdom?
Uncle Hercules. Yeah. Man, you got the great elder Uncle Reggie in the chat. He said, and this is powerful. This is powerful right here. Check this out. He says, science is finding solutions to problems by a method. First, there has to be a problem to be solved and methods of solving. Ultimately, it's the solving or potential solving of a problem. Now he said,
sir. Yes, sir. That's exactly what I said.
He says, yes, conclusions are not solutions to a problem. This is key. So basically, you know what I'm saying? They put a word on it and called it science. You know what I'm saying? We was problem solving damn 3,000, 50,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They just do this special EIENCE. All right, go ahead, Uncle.
Mm-hmm. So continuing. What has stood in the way of using collective wisdom in the past was the influence of outside aliens and foreign ideas. This influence has been more directive than informative, a condition that must be radically altered. More often than not, the foreign influences have refuted our collective wisdom to our disadvantage. Needless to say, this absurdity was primarily the responsibility of the educated component of our people who accepted the outsider's knowledge too uncritically. Or I should say, the outsider's knowledge also uncritically. Now, this I experience a lot because I meet people who always want to talk about, in the community, we want to do a stop the violence program. And I ask them, so what's your methodology? What's your approach? Talking to them, and I ask them, hey, have you ever read Amos Wilson's book, Black on Black Violence? Nope. I've never met one person who wanted to do a stop the violence program who's read Amos Wilson's Black on Black Violence book. Not to say that Amos Wilson's book is the perfect solution, but it's one of them. It's a solution from our people. Most of these people, they're looking at solutions from the Europeans, the enemies of Black people. They're using their solutions to stop the violence in the neighborhoods, and that's why we continue to have violence. It ain't ending. Let's continue. Now, the top part of this quote, the top part I read, and he's quoting, I'm going to go into the quote by Carter G. Woodson. The Negro thus educated in his hopeless liability of the race. When a Negro has finished his education in our schools, then he has been equipped to begin the life of an Americanized or Europeanized white man. Before he steps from the threshold of his alma mater, he is told by his teachers that he must go back to his own people from whom he has been estranged by a vision of ideas, which in his disillusionment, he will realize that he cannot attain. Even if the Negroes do successfully imitate the whites, nothing new has thereby been accomplished. You simply have a larger number of persons doing what others have been doing. The unusual gifts of the race have not thereby been developed, and now an unwilling world therefore continues to wonder what the Negro is good for. Remind me of that book, Who Needs the Negro? And so Jacob Carruthers continues, and he says, the reason for giving our undivided attention to this matter is implied in the quotation from Brother Woodson. Miseducation of the Negro. Our students are caught between the philosophy of liberation and the methodology of oppression. Let us resolve this contradiction and put our program together. So they are saying, and I heard Dr. Mayat say this, and Brother Obatade Cambone say this. You know, we educate our youngins on the knowledge of Black people and the Black liberation struggle, and proud to be Black. But once they graduate, we have nothing to offer them. We just send them out to go work with white people. You have to go out in the world to get a job with the white man. We haven't developed an industry for our children to go into. But we've seen other people develop it. We've seen the Koreans come over here and develop an industry. Chinese, our Latinos, they've come here, they develop an industry. But we put pride on getting your degree in engineering and going to work for Boeing or Lockheed Martin. So this is what he's saying. We give them the philosophy of liberation, but then we send them out in the world just to go work for the enemies. And that is not, that we can't continue that. That is not going to help us. Objectivity. Universality has, within the context of the European Watamawazo. Remember, the Watamawazo is the cultural, I forgot. I gotta look that up. Wait, I'm gonna look that up. I forgot. The Watamawazo been the most significant ingredient of objectivity. It is the myth of scientific objectivity that allows Europeans to speak for all of us. And I heard you brothers the other day. You know, science is objective. It's objective. You know, it's for everybody. It's objective. So real quick, she said the Utamawazo is the cultural thought, the structured thought of the culture. All right. Objectivity, the myth. The myth of objectivity and the use of the methodology of objectification is one aspect of universalism as an expansion of European Utamaroho. And the Utamaroho is the force, the vital force of the culture that moves the culture forward. And as a tool of Western cultural imperialism. In addition, objective scholarship serves to camouflage the proselytization of their own nationalistic interests. Put simply, in the context of European ideology, objectification becomes a means of claiming universality where there is none. Science is objective. Okay. And science is objective, man. You know, science is just science, man. Lies. Ain't we supposed to say lies? You got to understand that. The denial of spirit. This is a Western culture phenomenon. In Western science, there is no such thing called the spiritual realm and no such thing called the soul. This is not being African, you guys. This is not Black. The philosopher Kwame Geechee tells us that in African philosophy, that the human is not just a physical person, but also a spiritual person. However, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson will tell you that there is no such thing as a spirit because there is no proof for it and it cannot be measured according to Western standards. And I should have put that video up, but I didn't download it. You can find him. You can find Dr. Tyson on Vlad TV.
Hey, Uncle Hercules, man, we got the stars in the chat. Okay, Uncle Reggie says we have developed industry, but the oppressor often destroys or absorbs the industry. And we got the pseudo killers. You mentioned the pseudo killers. We got Uncle Bobby in the banker. He says no such thing as white science or black science. Then he says Yorugu is a pseudo book for sure. Man, and you was just talking about this, Uncle Hercules.
Yo, and it's a pseudo book. All right, I would like to see your research on the pseudo book of Yorugu. You know what I'm saying? I would like for you, and even though Dr. Moran, she don't do no debates, but I remember she came here. You should have went down and talked to her. But we know you ain't gonna do that, brother Ankh. You Baltimore Bama. Nah. All right, there we go. So yeah, in Western culture, they deny the spirit. There's no such thing as a spirit or a soul. They don't believe in that. All right, that's nothing, man. So, and for you brothers, so hold up, I'm gonna go back real quick. For you brothers, just got here,
and yet you have classrooms filled with general and introductory psychologists written by white men and women, and think you're learning some neutral, non-political psychology. No such thing as a neutral and non-political psychology. There is no neutral and non-political course in this institution, and I'm talking even about physics, mathematics, and computer science. I heard some joking up like, there is no black chemistry. There is no black physics. Lies. Because you must understand that chemistry and physics and mathematics and all flows from the consciousness and mind of man. They do not exist apart from that. That science flows from the political and social and economic organization of a people. Science just does not pop up in the minds of geniuses. People must exist in a particular political, social, historical context in order for science to develop and to flourish. And unless you know the historical, political context in which science is created and motivated, you will not create science. You will then educate some people who can think in science, and then those same people will be used by your enemies to destroy you and your children.
Facts. So I just wanted to go back to play that because I know some of you guys just joined. And hey, that is what we mean by white science. We don't mean that. We don't mean that when you take the integral of x squared, it's 3x squared over 3. It's x to the third over 3. It's going to be different in Shanghai than over in Botswana. No, it's not. That's not what we mean. All right. So let me go back. Let's continue. So I hope I laid a foundation for you to understand that there is the difference in the approach to doing science and to solving problems. Black people approach science differently than white people approach it. Our ancestors approached doing science differently and solving problems than white people. The way they like to solve problems is through technology. You get technology to solve your problems. All right. That's if you're more technological advanced means you're a better civilization. That's not what we mean. That's not how Black people use science. So, what is Black science? From Brother Kamalu, from the book Foundations of African Thought, good book, real good book. I read this book. I had this book 20 years ago. I think more than 20 years ago. But it took me a while. I had to go back and reread. It took me a while to understand the concepts. In Africa, the arts and sciences are interrelated. The reason why the arts and sciences in Africa are able to be interrelated in this way is partially due to the two-dimensional character of African science. African science is not merely an objective material science. It is a science that recognizes the existence of the spiritual forces. It is a science that recognizes the existence of the spiritual forces. They recognize the African people, black people, acknowledge the spirit, acknowledge that there is a spiritual realm. This is from Brother Obadale Cambone and Yashir. A major difference between African thought and Eurasian thought is the distinction between complementary opposites and dichotomous diametric opposites. In this paper, we lay bare many manifestations of African concepts of complementary opposites, drawing from examples from thought through the global African world. We maintain that the African science of astronomy and associated mathematical calculations utilize analogical reasoning to inform architecture, philosophy, spiritual, and literature, and vice versa, as the abstract complement to the physical. That is Black science. They had understood that there was complementarity throughout the universe. You got day, you have night. If you have something wet, then you have to have dry. If you have cold, you have to have hot. If you have physical people, a physical world, then you have to have a spiritual world. That was the mindset of the ancestors. That's the mindset of Black people when it comes to understanding the universe and science. This is from Brother Marumo and Chakali, Understanding African Philosophy and African Spirituality. From an African philosophy, humanity is in a relationship with the environment, culture, and tradition. This means humanity's relationship does not end. The relationship is of a consanguinity nature, which is relationship by blood. Therefore, from that point, the relationship among Africans does not die. Even after death, the relationship is still there. This notion brings forth that African relationship with ancestors is forever and is both spiritual and philosophical. It is a spiritual and philosophical relationship. Philosophical in the sense that even after death, the ancestors are still parents and given the due respect. Stop playing. How many of y'all pour out some liquor for your brothers, sisters that pass? Some of y'all ain't, you ain't been through that. How many of you guys, you may pour out liquor for your great grandma, or you may, you say something for your great grandma. We acknowledge the ancestors. We acknowledge our elders, those who have passed in our family, because we understand that while they're physically they're no longer here, spiritually they still with us. That is African. That is Black. That is Kemetu, Obidiman. That is how we approach philosophy of science. Again, from Kamalu. If science is addition to other areas of knowledge, it is not universal or culturally independent, then this has very important implications. For Africans have adopted through the Western system of education a science, at least, which has evolved out of a culture which is not our own. Science has evolved. Today's science has evolved out of a culture that is not our own. I know a lot of y'all feel like, nah, man, I'm American, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm American through and through. I love Abraham Lincoln. He freed slaves, man. I got white people in my family. I can't, I'm not talking about it. Shut the fuck up. Out of here. You hear that shit? Science wasn't found on an island. by itself. It came like what Amos Wilson said. It came from out of the mind of man. It came out of a group of people. It came out of the mind of the Europeans, the enemies of black people. I mean, it came out of a culture that is not African. Period. I mean, come on, man. It came out of a culture that is not African. Please explain to me, what were black people doing during this time period? I would like to know. We were fighting for our lives, fam. Our ancestors was fighting. This is the time period that they developed their scientific method. That they came up with all these techniques and laws and ideas. What were we doing? We had to fight. We didn't have the time to sit back and come up with, scientific techniques and we didn't have time for that. We had to save the kids. We had to make sure our children live. We were fighting. This stuff you call science came out of a time period that was anti-black. It developed from a group of people that despised the black man, the black woman, the black child. That's why we say this is white science. Your approach to solving this problem, to get your conclusion, is how white people, how the Europeans, the enemies of black people, approach to solve problems, to draw their conclusions. Spiritual realm, according to Adolfo, in the African, this is from Marumo and Chakale again. In the African worldview, the nature of being does not comprise solely of what we can perceive with our visual senses. That is our eyes. There are two aspects to the created universe: the physical and the spiritual. The spiritual realm is also stratified into various spaces and abodes, those of departed ancestors, spirits, and that of the penultimate source of creation of all things in existence. Adolfo further adds that these two realms are in constant interchange with each other, and what happens in one realm can have an impact on the other. In doing so, keeps order and harmony in the cosmos and on Earth. Black people acknowledge the spiritual realm. Black people acknowledge their ancestors. That is how we approach. We don't stop, we don't stop multiplying 5 times 6, 30. We don't stop that. We keep going. But we still acknowledge the spiritual world as we conduct, the research. You perform your Z test, your Chi test. You still acknowledge the spiritual world. This is from the brother Mbong Basong. Africa figured out the issue of Ama, the creator. He used the word God. I replaced it with Ama. I used a black name for the creator. From a different perspective, the truth about Ama and on how Ama can be approached. On this matter, it is interesting to read the copy of the scribe mathematician Amos, which gives evidence on the mind refinement that reasons on the issues of Ama. Correct method of investigation, nature, to know everything that exists, each mystery, and all the secrets. The mathematician commits science to the knowledge and mastery of the mystery, and secrets of creation with the challenge of discovering the principle of principles governing creation. I remember reading that years ago, and that was kind of an inspiration that sparked my interest in studying mathematics. I wanted to get my degree in math. Like, damn, what? You can know the mysteries of the universe? It was that when I read that. He also goes on and says, modern science is in line with sacred science of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley, whose main approach was based on the development of speculative physical principles, which later became philosophical and religious codes of life. Aman, Atamra, etc., etc. I said this before. Asa G. Hilliard pointed this out, that the ancestors studied the universe. They studied their ecology. Then they built a spirituality based on the universe and what was around them. And today, that's the funny thing. See, if you get into African philosophy, if you get back to Black philosophy, there would have been no debate between the sisters, Dr. Too Sweet and the girl, the sister Nepal, because they was debating on, whether or not, what was it? The universe was started by evolution, or was it by intelligent design? According to the ancestors, it's both. There's no debate. It's both. But if you approach this from the European perspective, you're going to think, oh, it's different. No. The ancestors said what the universe started from a tiny little small egg. Ma created herself from that egg and expanded the universe, spoke the universe into existence. Our ancestors had an understanding of how the universe created. And today, Western science called it the Big Bang. It's the same thing. But we was already in tune because we already was informed because we was in tune with the universe. Whereas in Western culture, you have to be separated from the universe. They don't see themselves as a part of the universe. Cosmic knowledge. This is from Dr. Zulu. It's a great brother. Y'all, look him up on YouTube. He has a lot of interviews. His lectures are, it's profound and deep. I'd love to meet this brother, man. This knowledge comes from their genesis of the cosmos. He's talking about the people, the brothers and sisters in South Africa, the Basuto tribe, who he's a member of. But we know this applies to all our people. The cosmic knowledge is a transcendental knowledge that transcends the senses and the mind. It is a pure form of knowledge that transcends the space and time domain. As previously mentioned, it is the cosmic knowledge that has shaped their mathematical knowledge as confirmed in their architectural tradition, where they use non-linear geometric, like the circle is a part of their design and the goal of construction to build environments that is aligned with the stellar universe. For Black people, we consider cosmic knowledge as a part of our understanding. Now, like I said, since we grew up in a Western culture, we don't understand that. That makes no sense to us. However, for our brothers and sisters on the continent, if you go talk to one of the priests, the Babalaos, they'll tell you, they'll break it down for you. Yes. They received the knowledge from the ancestors, and not just from the ancestors, but also from the spirit of the universe. This is how they approach to doing and solving problems scientifically. You consult the ancestors. You consult the universe. Western culture, you don't do that. That's unheard of. You don't do that. No. What the hell? That's pseudo, bro. You can't do that. So I was trying to so I hope I'm trying to make my point clear. So I'm trying to lay down a foundation of Black science. Black science is spirituality and science done together is not separated. As I quoted Marshall Clegg in his book, he was saying that when you look at ancient Kemet, throughout the whole timeline of ancient Kemet, they did science and spirituality was never separated. So a person who was teaching mathematics, a mathematician, would be in class talking about, solving for X, and mentioning Ra at the same time, understanding the movements of Ra. Matter of fact, that is not that a parabola going across the globe as the sun rises and the sun sets. Ra makes a parabola. It might be what there might be what cosh. There might be a cosh sign actually. I think about it. I was just thinking about it. But the science, the teaching of the science would not been separated from the spirituality. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. Whereas I know we think that, science is just science. Everybody can do science. Yes, but it is your end goal that makes a difference. This picture I got up here, I think that's Tutankhamun, the helmet of Tutankhamun. Do you know that helmet is welded together? I think I just found out last year. That helmet is welded together. Now we talk about 3,000 years ago, fam. Come on, they were doing advanced science. How do you model the spiritual realm? Because I heard a lot of you all on a couple of these channels say there is no such thing as the spiritual world, the spiritual realm. Now, this is my own thoughts, okay? You ain't gonna find no white person to back this up. Because I know you brothers. I know you brothers, you pseudo killers. Y'all love white people. Y'all only use white people. So you ain't gonna find no white person to back this up. And I'm saying that complex analysis is what you use to model the spiritual realm. All right. We know that real numbers like 2 and square root of 2 and pi are real. Those are real numbers. But not all numbers we could call real numbers. Like if you had x squared plus 1 equals 0, solving for x, you would have x squared equals -1, or the square root of -1, which isn't real. You can't find that on a real number line. What number can you multiply by itself, squared by itself, will give you a negative? If I take -4 and square it, you're just going to get 16. -5, square it, you're just going to get 25. So there is no number that you can square by itself that's going to give you a negative. All right. This is where what they call imaginary numbers come into play. An imaginary number is is defined as the square root of -1. I squared equals -1. Okay. I know a lot of you guys probably have taken pre-calculus or trigonometry. I think trigonometry, you should learn this. Definitely in pre-cal. So yes, our ancestors knew how to model the spiritual realm. And I'm claiming that complex analysis and imaginary numbers, they is what you would use to model the spiritual world. So a complex number would look like this. Z equals A plus IB, where A is the real part and B is the imaginary part. Complex numbers do not map to the third dimension, to our reality. You can't map them. You cannot graph it in our dimension. They only map to second dimension and the fourth dimension. And we all know if we live in the third dimension, the physical world, then the fourth dimension has to be the spiritual realm. And like I said, you're not going to find this in no Eurocentric text. I'm making this claim myself. Complex numbers map to the spiritual world. Okay. And there's a paper you can read. It's a short paper by this Professor Michael Barr on the Frobenius theorem and real division algebras. You can look this one up. And in fact, I'm gonna pull it up. Let me pull this up. All right. So this paper is it's real short. You know, you guys can read this one. It's real short. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Because then I'll have to explain each and every detail of the meaning, because I know not everybody has the math background. So he says in the beginning, the Frobenius theorem states that a finite dimensional division algebra over the reals is one of the reals. The real R, the complex, or the quaternions. Okay. Now, excuse me. So he recently he said Peter showed me a proof that is simpler than the known proofs. All right. So assuming that the dimension is not one, it is used conjugating by a square root of -1 to simplify the argument. Outline is this proof. It is valid of the assumption that R is a real closed field and A is a finite dimensional R algebra with zero divisors. In addition, so zero divisors, closed field. So gotta explain. So a closed field is just you doing operations under certain conditions, like multiplication plus division you have certain conditions that you're doing operations. Zero divisors meaning that any two numbers multiplied together will not equal 0. Besides, 0 and 3 is going to be 0. 0 times 5 is going to give 0. But any other numbers besides 0, like 5 times 6 is going to give you 30, they won't equal 0. Which is like, to me, I'm sorry, this is like common sense, man. It's like, what the hell? How did you come up with? Why did you use that as a proof? And then these people get like all this credit. Sorry, yo. When I took a real analysis, it was just like all these simple as common sense proofs that people was coming up with, and they get so much credit for it. But anyway, that's what that was. But I'm gonna scroll down because, like I said, this is a proof. This is a proof to show that complex numbers only map to the fourth dimension, the second and the fourth dimension. They do not map to our dimension. Okay. And let A be a real algebra without zeros, divisors, and a finite dimension over R. Then A is one of these: the real, the complex, or the quaternions. Okay. So he goes through the steps of this proof, and I'm gonna scroll down just to this part. Somebody calling me, my bad. Oh damn, that's my teacher. Wait a minute.
If you need a break, you good.
Wait, hold on. Let me holler at him real quick.
All right.
Hey, Master Cheeks.
Peace to all the elders in the chat. Peace to all the elders in the chat. Peace to all the superstars. Peace, appreciate everybody who just joining. Appreciate everybody who been joining. Goddamn me. Shout out my boy Bantu. Shout out Uncle Reggie. I just text you, Uncle Reggie. As soon as he done, I'm gonna drop that link on y'all. I see Uncle Bobby Banger is in the bushes. Uncle Bobby Banger in the bushes, waiting on Uncle Hercules to say one thing, pseudo. You probably already got some clips of you, Uncle Hercules. But yeah, man, we rocking tonight. I'm gonna drop that link in about 15 minutes, man. Uncle Hercules is putting it down. You know what I'm saying? We looking at everything through an African lens. Uncle Hercules, you back? He muted his mic. But yeah, man, that's how we doing it, man. If you tired of wearing it, if you tired of wearing clothes that ain't got no brand on it, it just say shirt. If you tired of wearing clothes, pants that just say pants. If you tired of wearing goddamn hoodies that just say hoodie. See on the back of this hoodie, we got, you know what I'm saying, Houston, Beaumont, Dallas, you know what I'm saying? We got, you know what I'm saying, all the prominent, you know what I'm saying, cities. And,
All right.
you know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, that link, you know what I'm saying, won't make you blink. And don't miss this this session right here. All right, Uncle Hercules, you back. Let's get it. Share your screen.
My bad, y'all. That was my sensei. He just got out of the hospital, had surgery.
Share your screen one more time. Share your screen one more time.
Screen. All right. So, where I was at. All right. So basically, what I wanted to show is what this paper shows is that when you map the complex numbers, they don't map to our dimension. Okay, and one of the things I don't like about math proofs is they use the same letter a lot, and it can be cumbersome and kind of confusing. So this is where he explains, let an A prime be defined as X is an element of A such that sigma of X equals negative X. Okay, and let's see this, because right here you got A equals A prime plus RI. All right, and this is right here. He is showing you that. See, he got X. If it was a different letter, I think it'd be easier for you guys to understand. But he's basically saying that this right here. Say that this is A. This is A. Say this is A. This is B. This is C. Right. And this is written like this. All right. And so this is actually just B. This is B right here. This equals this. And this C, this RI right here equals this one right here. All right. And so he's saying that A is fourth dimensional because this is A. This A right here. A is fourth dimensional. This is A. A is 2 plus 2 equals 4. For any X as an element of A prime, left multiplication by X interchanges A prime and RI. Hence, A prime is also 2-dimensional, and A has dimension 4. So he's saying that it maps to the fourth dimension. It comes from the second dimension, 2 dimension, to the fourth. It skips over the third dimension because it's an invertible map. It's invertible mapping when you map these complex numbers. Okay, and that's what this paper shows. And there are a few people online. I believe you can find them in what's that guy's name? They do a video on it where they talk about it. They go through the proof and they could explain it to you. But the point is, complex numbers are a representation of the spiritual realm. That's the point that I'm making. Geometric facts about the fourth dimension are just as easy to state. The fourth dimension can be thought of as a direct perpendicular to every direction in 3-dimensional space. In other words, it stretches out along an axis, say the W axis, that is mutually perpendicular to the familiar X, Y, and Z axis. Analogous to the cube is a hypercube or tesseract. and to the sphere is a 4D sphere, hypersphere. Just as there are 5 regular polygons known as the Platonic solids, so there are 6 4-dimensional regular polytopes. And where did Plato get those solids from? Kemet, because we know he went to Kemet to study. That's where he got his information from. So you're looking at a 4th-dimensional cube, an idea that we live in the 3rd dimension, so we're trying to project an idea of what a 4th-dimensional cube would look like. That's what we can't vision the 4th dimension. It's like the 2 dimensions. Think of the table, or think of the computer screen that you're watching right now. If the screen was a world full of people, they live in a 2-dimensional world. And if you would take your face and put it close to the screen as possible, or put it on the screen, they would not see your face. They would just see whatever shape of your face is, the oval shape of your face in 2 dimensions. That's the same thing with us. We live in 3 dimensions. The 4th dimension we cannot see. What beings that are living in the 4th dimension, they could transverse our dimension. They could travel through our dimension, and we won't see them because we cannot perceive 4th dimensions. But that does not mean that it does not exist. We know it exists. The jeweled pyramid. This is from Richard Gilling's Mathematical in the Time of the Pharaohs. What do you see? A cube inverted, a pyramid that is inverted. He said he got this from the Reisner papyri. And I've been looking, I've been trying to find more information on this. I couldn't find anything. But tell me that does not look like a 4th-dimensional cube. Our ancestors had an understanding of what the 4th dimension was. They had an understanding of these subatomic particles and all this stuff, because they was already connected with the 4th dimension. They was connected with the ancestors. They was connected with the spiritual realm. When you pour in that libation, when you're going through the rituals, they making that connection with the spiritual world. So they understood that there was a physical world and a spiritual world. They understood that they live in the 3rd dimension and the ancestors live in the 4th dimension. They had an understanding of that. So when we talk about Black science, we talk about science that's connected with the 4th dimension. How else y'all think they moved those 80-ton granite stones? Think they just did that by happenstance? No. They connected with the spiritual realm to learn how to move those stones. In fact, there are videos. I just saw a video the other day in Japan. They use harmonic analysis to move rocks. And that's what I forgot who said that. I think it was Dr. Mayat who said that. Or it was Brother James Smalls who said that they think that the ancestors used harmony, music, to lift those 80-ton stones. Yes, that's more than likely. So our science is a sacred science. Complex numbers in Kemet. Now this is a paper that I'm writing, and I'm halfway through it. It's just I need to sit down and have the time to write it. So I'll probably do it over the summertime because it's the end of the school year and we just finished testing. We're getting ready for the prom. Getting these kids ready to graduate and stuff. So, I probably won't have time to write this joint. So from my abstract, I said advanced mathematics is nothing new. This paper will explore the idea that ancient Egypt, Kemet, had an understanding of what we call imaginary numbers. In so-called ancient times, people had a good understanding of advanced mathematics, especially in Kemet, as they called their land. The buildings and pyramids from 4,000 years ago is evidence of their mathematical prowess. There are many papers and books written on the level of mathematics that the Kemetic people knew, but they usually fail to point out their understanding of advanced math topics. The Great Pyramid, is encoded with so many math concepts that it's not a coincidence And one of the advanced math ideas that they left in the Great Pyramid was the geometric representation of complex numbers or imaginary numbers. Specifically, z equals the fourth root of -1. Now, I know people are like, what the hell? How? And I could prove it. They knew that. And last time I was here, I showed you guys that they had an understanding of partial differential equations. It wasn't nothing, you know what I'm saying? You talk about a people, a civilization that existed for 5,000 years. Then you have not only that, but they were living in that area of Kemet, the area of called Egypt and the Sudan, for 100,000 years. They were already doing mathematical calculations. But if we listen to our enemies on what they knew, we would only think, oh, they just knew algebra. That's all it went. That's as far as they stopped. But they literally left us physical evidence of what they knew. Literally. You're looking at the shit right in your face. They left it there. And a lot of people argue, well, there was no written evidence. But you guys forget that the Persians invaded. And when they invaded, they destroyed and burnt a lot of the libraries. And then when Alexander the Great invaded, the so-called Great, he also ransacked the libraries. And he took all them books back to his teacher. I think who was his name? Archimedes. I forgot his name. But they ransacked the libraries and burnt them. And they stole all those books and manuscripts out of there. Y'all forget that part. That's one of the reasons why you don't have any written evidence. All right. However, they left us physical evidence. And they showing us their greatness. I know we live in a so-called modern time. We have, you got lights. We connecting on the internet. You know what I'm saying? We all across America listening to me right now. Probably all across the world. We in an advanced place. But I have to point out that our ancestors built a building, a pyramid structure, by just putting block on top of block on top of block on top of block. No cement, no nails, no screws. And those buildings have been sitting there for the past 4,000 years. Where in Western culture, you can't even build a shack that will last 50 years. So there has to be something that our people knew. And I'm saying that once we get back to that African science, that black science of combining the spiritual system and our mathematics together, we're going to be on that level as well. White people can't do what we do. You guys, we see this every year. Football, basketball, baseball. You see our magnificence. Now imagine when we do that, when we add that to the sciences. Think about all the advancements. Remember the movie with the lady with the sisters? The guys went to the moon. They couldn't get back, and the sisters had to figure it out. Forgot the name of the movie, but that's not that one incident. The cell phone. They made a cell phone, but they couldn't get it to work. It took a brother to get it to work. The quantum computing. I haven't verified this yet, but I saw a video of some guy talking about how in order for quantum computing to work, they need melanin to make it work. And I've been looking into that. Like, that's interesting. Really. The sister, what's her name? Henrietta Lackey or something like that, where they took her cells from after she passed away. They took her cells from her body to do scientific research and to advance their stuff. You guys think that was only her? No, that's all of us. What do you guys think they do when they draw your blood? After they draw your blood, they take a couple of squirts of it, put it on the strip. But what do they do with the rest that's in the valve? They study that. They can't do what we do. And once we realize that, once we realize how powerful we are, we'll get back to it. Moving towards death. One of the things that we must recognize is that our oppressor represents death. There's death around them somewhere, which is the reason they are deadly as a people. Every advancement in knowledge is an advancement in the ability to kill and to destroy the earth, to kill and to destroy nature, to kill and destroy others, rape and rob the earth of its wealth. We're following a group of people towards death. Homeomorphism. So I'm about to wrap this up, and I'm going to end it with a quick little mathematical analysis. Homeomorphism. So homeomorphism means the same. Okay. All right. This is the definition: a bijective function that maps x to y between topological spaces with the property that both f and f inverse maps y to x are continuous is called a homeomorphism. If there exists a homeomorphism f x mapped to y, we say that x and y are homeomorphic spaces, or that they are topologically equivalent, and write x symbolism homeomorphic to y. All right. So basically, we're saying that it means that they are the same. You can say that they are the same. So real quick, hold up. I should put that in there.
Uncle Hercules been putting that goddamn work in, man.
I'm mad, yo. It's funny because at the school, the teachers or all the other teachers, they were like, yo, Hercules, he a real math person, man. You a real math. I'm like, what? We all got degrees in math. What are you talking about? They's like, no, you really like to sit around and do math. I thought we all like to sit around, but nah, I do like to sit around and just solve problems and stuff. But all right, so let me explain. I'm gonna just quickly show you homomorph. What do they mean? Homomorphism. I should have had this up. Whiteboard.
All right. Like, share, subscribe to the show. Like, share,
subscribe. See me and my grandma, my baby girl. She just graduated high school. She's at Howard. All right, so coming up. So it said homeomorphism. It said when. What was that at? Here it is. Homomorphism is bijective function. It has to be bijective and continuous. Okay, so that's what they said that is a homeomorphic function, and just being homeomorphism means just the same. All right. Let's do this. So let me. My bad. I should have had this already. My bad. I forgot all about this joint. All right. So let's take this. All right, let's use the space. My bad, y'all. I meant to have this already. All right. So we got this fun. So let's take. We're going to map. Let me draw. Ah. All right. All right. So axis. Says that functions have to be bijective and continuous. So let's say if I draw a line here, and I'm gonna have red. I have one over here, circle here, and some blue up here. Have another circle. Okay, so we're going to map from this point here to this point. Okay, it's homeomorphic to make it see if it's homeomorphic. So this would be this line here would be, let's say that this is A. Okay, and coming from here to here would be the transition or the transition, or let's say translation, traveling from this point all the way up to this point. All right, this is T. The transition from here to here. All right, and the red circle here would travel from here to this point. Okay, so it would move into here. Okay, now it's small here, but it'll move after moving up to here. It would expand until it fills out into the blue circle. Okay, complete a dilation. It would dilate and fill up that circle. So we'll say this is D, the dilation. So it has to be homeomorphism has to be bijective and continuous. So if T, this transition is from X, maps from X to A. I should have said, my bad. I should have said X. All right, it maps from X plus A. This is A. All right, and D, the dilation, maps from X C times X. Okay, where C is in a real, C is a part of, is an element of the real numbers. Okay. Now, the inverse, no, let me put this over here. So keep it right there. The inverse of T. So we take the inverse of T is X. Come on, why shut up? X from A minus X. I meant to say X minus A. Get this right. All right. X minus A. That's the inverse because we have X plus A, so the inverse would be X minus A. D would be a map from X to 1 over C of X. Okay. And it should be obvious that C can't be 0. All right. Because that would be undefined. So this shows that it's both bijective and continuous. Okay. And if it was a composite function of D, composite function D of T, you guys remember from pre-cal doing composite functions, it would still be homeomorphic, because if you're adding this one plus this one together, you still get a homeomorphic function. So what is it saying? I remember I said homeomorphism means the same. Okay. Now this is a short definition of what I'm doing. I do have a deeper definition of going into this one, but homeomorphism means the same. So traveling from here, this circle here, traveling from here to here, I'm saying it's the same as the blue circle. The red circle is the same as the blue circle. Okay. And the distance don't matter. Okay. The length from here to here don't matter. But the time that it takes to get from here, it don't matter, because it's still going to get here and it's still going to fill out into the circle, and it's still going to be the same as this circle. That's what homeomorphism means. Okay. Now, I know you're like, what? All right, what the hell? What does it got to do with anything? So that's what this definition is saying. F map to X is a homomorphism. Morphism then is the inverse of F Y F inverse of F Y map to X. All right, are the same. So what am I saying?
You will see later on then that if the education doesn't wake you up from this, you are still going to be served. You think perhaps that your ability to choose various courses at this school and other schools, your capacity now to choose whether you will be a computer scientist or this or that, means that you've advanced beyond your great-great-grandparents who were slaves. You have not advanced one bit. We don't have time to talk today about what I call the European constants, those things that remain the same despite all the apparent changes that occur in the world. As a matter of fact, the changes that occur in the world are meant to maintain the very basic constants. Integration is not just an idea of black people. It is an idea pushed by the white ruling class. You have to understand that. It is.
That's what I'm saying. Homeomorphism proves what Nana Amos Wilson just said. Our relationship with white people has not changed over time, no matter how many years has passed. It's still the same. We were brought here to make white people wealthy. Still to this day, we make white people wealthy. In fact, it's gotten worse that other groups of people have gotten in on the game. All they need to do is move to a black neighborhood, open up a store, put a neon signs, bright neon signs, and black people want to flock to it. That's why you see in the black neighborhood, you see a lot of people from India and Pakistan with stores, making sure their families go to college. Their kids ain't out in the street shooting themselves. You know what I'm saying? So the relationship that we had with white people hasn't changed, and it's time to change the relationship with black people. It's time for us to get back to that sacred science. To say think that there is no such thing as white people science is completely incorrect. I've shown tonight that black people have always been doing science long before white people. However, our approach in doing science is completely opposite from how Europeans, the enemies of black people, conduct their scientific goals. I believe that black people have to get back to doing sacred science the way our people have always been conducting science. And that's with spirituality and science combined. We are living in a time of Isfet. And in order to restore Ma'at, we have to implement the knowledge of our ancestors, AI, ancestral intelligence. That's how we're going to get back on top. And they know that. That's why they keep us dumbfounded with, silly stuff. As long as we don't stay focused, we keep diverging off the path of Black liberation and Black restoration. We're never going to get back to that point. Because as long as we believe that, we live in the modern time, the modern era, where everything is better, we're not going to get back to the point. So yes, there's a thing called sacred science. And there's a thing called white science. And we have to understand that there's a difference in doing science. Our approach to doing difference. Our approach is that we see ourselves connected to the universe, see ourselves connected to nature as a part of nature. Whereas white people don't do that. They see themselves separated. Marima Ani talked about that in Urugu. And I would love to see Brother Ankh, show us how white people don't see themselves separated from nature. Don't see nature as an object. Don't see other people as an object. So yeah, there's a such thing as white science. And in order to understand how they built those pyramids, you have to implement sacred science, what white people call pseudoscience. That's the only way you're going to understand. And truthfully, we're not going to do it. It's going to be our grandchildren and our great grandchildren. We have to educate them on this and educate them on getting back to being fully African. Because
how you feel about this comment? How you feel about this comment right here? This Uncle Reggie. He says no Black Americans have ever won a Nobel Peace Prize. Charles, Drew, and others were worthy, but scientific racism prevented this. How you feel about that?
Shit, wow, I never knew that. That's facts. Wow. Definitely Charles Drew should have won one. Definitely. I don't know if they had the Peace Prize back when he was in there, but I have a friend of mine, an associate that I know, who she had a PhD. She just did a PhD in I think sociology, and her research was on Black people in physics. And she said that there are only like 190 Black people in America. I think she said in America. Yeah, in America. Or was it the world? Nah, in America. She said in America. There's like only like 190 something like people with degrees, PhDs in physics. And I was like, wait, what? She said, yeah. And I said, wow, why is that? And she, because she interviewed a lot of people and this and that. And she's like, for the most part, it was racism. They wouldn't award the PhD to the people, basically because they was Black in physics. They not because they try to find some reason, to disagree with their research. But she's like, yeah, basically, it came down to just racism. And I wasn't surprised, at the racism part. I was just surprised at the low number. Damn. I thought there was more, at least 1,000 Black people, across America with degrees in physics. But she's like, nah, they keep that shit, tight and stuff. So,
all right. How you feel about this comment? Uncle Reggie says this is a good topic. We need to use words that apply to solving a particular problem, not conclusions, and certainly not spirit or spirituality. So he I guess he's saying we need to use a different word. I guess for science, for our African science.
I mean, again, I would the only pushback I would have. Peace, Uncle Reggie. Yo, you been listening to you. I've been following you for years. Listening to you years on Sonnet, brother, and appreciate the work you've been doing. Only pushback I would say about that is that it's both, because we live in a Western cultural society, and they got their hands all across the globe, and so it's going to be both. You're going to have to use their methods to solve the problems, but then at the same time, we still can use our method, our techniques to solve problems, to approach the problems and solve them. And I truly believe that once we start really implementing that sacred science amongst our people, you know, we're gonna leapfrog over everybody else, you know, because they can't do what we do, and that's the issue, and they hate that. They know they can't do what we do, and they hate that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think it's both. We just can't throw out, you know, this European approach to science completely. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna have to keep it and use it because, you know, we got the AI, you know, coming up, these robots coming up. You know, we got to understand it and be able to fight back and use the methodology, you know, to fight back against this technology that they coming out with and stuff. You can't do that by ignoring it, not at all. You know, I even took data science. I didn't want to take no data science classes, but I took them because I needed to understand how to code and, you know, how to write programs and machine learning and all that stuff. You know, I did it, you know, part of my electives. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we have to learn as well. You know, we just can't throw out Western science completely 100%. You know, it's going to take a revolution around the world, a nuclear reset. In order for that to happen, it's going to be a nuclear war, everything in the whole planet reset. But that ain't going to happen. That ain't going to
Man,
happen.
we got OG Uncle Reggie in the building, in the prime, in his flesh, looking healthy. Man, come on. What's up, Uncle Reggie?
Peace,
Hey,
Uncle Reggie.
great Hotep. Peace. Great show, great topic. It is something certainly we would hope that we could have a bigger audience to discuss these things. Um, so I have there's lots of things that you said was actually correct, and the first thing is that you are a educator. You passed the test, right? So meaning that you have a bachelor's of science and you have a master's, I guess, uh, and you actually teach, right?
No, sir, just a bachelor's, sir.
Okay, so but you're able to teach, but you do have a bachelor's of science,
Yes,
and
sir, mathematics.
right, and I have a bachelor's of science in computer science, right? And you know, when I was in school, and well, I had to my the problems I had to solve in computer science, they can't be half right. Your code has to deliver a particular output, and that output has to be right, and that's how you pass your exams, right, and do your projects, right. And so my degree is really old, 1988, but I was one among the first groups of blacks or African Americans that got a degree in computer science in the age of the laptop. I started off doing mainframe, mini computers, and then the PC. And the PC wasn't Microsoft at that time. There were a number of different competing projects on different types of PC architectures, and then ultimately Microsoft. And then I did PC to networking, and uh, and uh, but I had to solve problems. So here's where I agree. Um, I agree that uh, um, there is scientific racism. I disagree that there is a black science and a white science. I heard what Dr. Amos Wilson said, and he was correct, but he certainly was talking about, um, well, you know, his training is a little bit different. When it comes to science, there's different type of sciences, of course. There's uh, the hard sciences, chemistry, biology, physics. Uh, there is uh, all types of advanced sciences now, quantum physics, and uh, there, there, there's so many different nuances on sciences now. Science is about solving problems. Do you agree or not?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Okay. So, so not everything is in fact science. Some people are building on problems that have been solved. Is, does that sound right? Meaning, if a
Yep. Yes,
problem
sir. Yeah.
has been solved, and then there becomes technology. Technology is basically they could create a tool, right, that allows repetitive results. Do you agree or disagree?
That allows. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Did I say it wrong, or you want to say it a different way? What's a tool?
No. 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 Go ahead. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. Spirituality doesn't produce tools. Spirituality is actually a foreign word imposed on African philosophy. Uh, Africans uh, largely believed in ancestral worship, animism, right? And as they believed in those things, they created structures and created, the whole structural design. Now, in the beginning, that was problem solving. That was a bit of what you call science. They went through all the different areas of the scientific method, and then it becomes a technology. So then they become a technology. uh, the problem with the way people think about Africa, and it's beautiful. You followed many of my teachers and people that I knew, Dr. Amos Wilson. I knew Marimba Annie. Uh, uh, um, I know Marimba Annie, or Dr. Donna Richards, right?
Mhm.
And I know, and I knew their teachers and some of their teachers. I lived in a time period in which I met almost every academic African centered, Afrocentric in the time period that was still around in 80, from 1983 on. Okay. Most of the teachers, well, they became teachers. So that means they weren't really solving problems. They were they weren't solving problems. uh, Not many of them. I could say that Dr. Shekante Diop was solving problems. I could say that Dr. Leonard Jeffries, to a certain degree, was solving problems. Dr. John Henry Clark, they were solving problems. Some of those things mixed with uh, trying to understand Africa as a whole, right? Um, as far as the hard scientists, there were a few hard scientists or people of different fields. They were like medical doctors, like Dr. Richard King. There was the Melanin Consortium with a lot of great minds in it, right? But it comes down to solving a problem. Are you following me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then when you solve a problem, usually people produce tools, and those tools help with a technology that can be duplicated. What I found about spirituality is that spirituality don't produce any tools, not one. It's when you did the example of real numbers, right? And real numbers. Well, spirituality is, if you want to equivalate it, it's not a real number. It's not a real number. And so it's hypothetical. And then Africa has so diverse. So there's not one African spirituality, if you want to use that word. And the Africans in the period of the six, up to the 16, 1700s were highly religious. And
Mhm.
because they were religious, or you could call it spirituality, there were some human problems that they didn't solve, right? Uh, it was okay when they were distant family groups, but it became more problematic when they were close. And then religion got in the way of this. There's something called divine kingships, and they weren't able to solve that problem. So every king was connected to God or connected to the spirit, to whatever spiritual group that they were, uh, and however they believed, whether they're kind of Yoruba based uh, right. And they looked at other Africans uh, sometimes as servants and enemies, right? And Dr. Diop, Diop talks about um, this in a number of his books, right? Um, and so we can't forget that, and we can't be romantic. Uh, the Europeans, because of their particular condition, they solved some human issues, right? I'm not going to say scientifically, but there is a science of warfare, right? Uh, Science of propaganda. There's many sciences. For their conditions, they were able to solve those problems so that they can super exploit Africa. So I have to ask you, um, now listen. I argue with Ankh a lot. I
Mhm.
argue with pseudo killers a lot, right? I argue with them. But I use the conversations to better articulate um, uh, to understand at first what they're talking about, and then to articulate an antithesis to what they're saying, right? So
Mhm.
you should never, if you know your work, you should never get upset. What you should do is just get better to articulate what you have to say. But I will say a problem that you will have is that when you're mixing science and solving scientific problems with culture, to they interconnect because, like Dr. Amos Wilson basically said, it's a human mental situation. But when it comes to science, it's simply solving a problem. And so there's only a science. Now, what scientific racism did was prevent us from getting recognition for the problems that we solved. Do you agree?
Yes, sir. To a certain extent, yes, sir.
Okay, so help me out. What part do you disagree?
Um, I think so. I think my pushback would be,
Uh-huh.
and again, you can correct me because I have
No,
not
no,
been.
I'm just we're having a dialogue. Because
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I want you to get better. I'm 60 years old. I listen, I've listened to all of the people that people thought were really great talkers and charismatic people and teachers and professors, right? Um and a lot of it sound good. A lot of it sounds good. But a lot of it I'm not a fan of, right?
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
that because of the human condition, they take it personally, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm not arguing. There's two things with people who haven't passed the test. I what I try to do is I try to be humble and get us to a point where we can have a dialogue, because you can't talk to me if you didn't pass the test. You have an observation, you have hypotheses, you have a theory, uh, fine, but you ain't solved no problems, right? You might use other people's work, but you yourself didn't solve the problem, right? I've been in the classrooms, you've been in the classrooms. Uh, there's a difference between people who are actively solving problems and a scientific problem. And then guess what? Once the problem is solved, then it becomes a technology. The so there's a lot of talkers in our community, and then there's a lot of old information that's totally outdated, unrealistic and untrue. So when when I'm talking to someone like you who have passed the test, you have to tell me if you're going to argue spirituality, you're going to have to explain a fake word that was imposed on African people that African people were never spiritual. Prove that they were spiritual.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think the only part that I was going to push back on, and I wanted to say was that the approach when you said we solve problems and you know go to technology. I look at the last I look at the King's Chamber. Last time I was on here, I showed that the King's Chamber is an applied science for the particle in the box. Now, when they did it, when our ancestors did it, it was not about controlling the atom, controlling that. It was about how do you use this to help yourself? How can it resonate with yourself? Whereas when you look at the King's Chamber, from my understanding now, I have not been. I admit this. I have not been to Kemet. I have not been to Egypt, and I have not been to the Great Pyramids. But I've read papers, people who've written papers about going into the pyramids and all their results of the sounds and acoustics and stuff like that. And I was just basing so basically I was doing a meta-analysis, bringing my conclusions off what I read and stuff like that. And it just hit me like, oh damn, this is actually a particle in a box, and that's what it actually is. And I felt that it was just mind blowing to me. Their approach. I mean, they wouldn't call it a particle in a box. They didn't call it that. I don't know. They might not call it that. They wasn't looking at it like that. But then, the Europeans at Schrodinger, they looked at it differently. Their results, their purpose for doing it was different than what our ancestors did. So that's why I say there's a difference in your your results and your goals to solving these problems. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a difference in the view.
Yes, sir.
Of what purpose, but the construction of the pyramid, those chambers, they started way earlier until they refined it to because they went through a whole tumuli period, tomb period, then they cave period, right? Cave period was first, and then the tumuli, and then those chambers and Abju, right? Abydos, and then the ultimately the step pyramid, and probably other pyramids that we don't know about. Other those were kind of like the layered. Uh, uh, the pyramid began as kind of like a layered tumuli. There's another word I just said, a lost of it, and so they did multiple things. They dug underground. They dug deep underground, and you can see the step pyramid, where it's 100 feet, 200 feet underground. They were able to observe the natural caves and rocks and the water level and stuff like that, and then they were able to build kind of structures on that until they got to the what we call the perfect pyramid, but they formulated that through observations of looking at hills. So the pyramids are fabricated hills because they first buried lots of humans in caves, right? They were kind of like, I'm not going to call them the word that they use is cave dwellers, which had been in Africa for many years. But to show their expertise, they built various chambers. So the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and chambers under the pyramid, they were able to build. But and so they had this thing called the Tepesep, which is the correct method, and so they were able to be great fabricators, right? And they certainly learned the science of building. and then it became a technology. Um, and so that's why I'm not being really hard on. I'm not being hard on you because there's no reason to be hard on you because look what they have to beat what Amos Wilson said. They have to because they all say they study and you was right. They heard him. But they don't really follow him, or do they try to prove that he's wrong? So now we're at the stage of proving some of the things that our ancestors said. We have to check to see if they're correct,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? Dr. Oyeho is a great mathematician, but he starts talking about things like God Almighty. He starts talking about things like the voice of God, and then and Africans didn't think like that at all. The voice of God. There's no voice of God in space. He should know that. You don't hear sound in space. There's other type of phenomenon that occurs in space. There's explosions in space that we will never hear until we get into atmosphere like Earth, and then we may hit we may as it affects the Earth's
Mhm.
atmosphere. So I'm like, great mathematics, right? Trying to put together the how can I say the mathematical theory of
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
right? And so he was a mathematical scientist solving that particular problem. But the problem is we make the mistake of bringing in terminology that has nothing to do with the problem, and that's the problem.
Yes, sir.
So then yes.
So, um, let me ask. Wait, hold up. Let me ask. Super Wavy, do you got to go?
Nah, you good, boss.
Okay. So the question I would like to ask, sir, is
Brother Reggie, I'm just your brother, man.
you still my elder brother.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, because they don't respect that in this
I
community.
respect
So
that. You
just
know what I'm
talk
Nah,
saying?
to
nah,
me.
nah,
I
nah. We
respect that,
respect our
bro.
elders over here.
You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I understand, but I live in a world. I would go to another channel. They don't respect that. I'm just so what I'm saying is sometimes we have elders that are completely wrong and bozo, right? They say the most ridiculous things, and some of them, I'm not going to mention no names, but some of them, I was around when they was being taught, right? I was around when they was being taught by people like Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Clark and Chancellor Williams and John G. Jackson and Dr. Leo Hansberry. I was around Dr. Shekanta Diop, right? Dr. Theophilo Benga. I was around when they was being taught. I knew when they didn't even know the Medu Neter. For them, the Medu Neter is a word because you could drag 95% of them in a museum and they got to read the captions. But they experts on Nile Valley culture. That shit behooves me, right? So at some point, some of them gotta relax. They use this word Kemet as if Kemet was the name of the civilization always. No, it was not, right? They had Henu, they had Tawi, they had Tameri. Kemet came at a particular time, maybe to solve a human problem in their culture, right? And then that word paired again with Tameri and other words later on, and kind of like slowly uh, uh, the significance slowly lost. But as far as we're concerned, in these crazy communities, it was always Kemet. So I try to solve a problem. I wrote a journal article on trying to solve that problem,
Mm.
right? So I actually went to pen and paper and computer characters, right, to write a paper and the struggle to get my paper published, and that took a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And But I talk to people, and they don't even know the first time that the word was applied to a living organism and what that living organism was, and they don't even know the text. Now that's and I'm saying, so don't so they shouldn't have a conversation with me. They should just ask me, because if I ask them, they don't know. So if you don't know, I'm gonna tell you. But that wasn't spirituality why they named the word Kemet, right? That was in relationship to their ancestral belief and uh, this other word, which is also European, which is animism, right? It was, but it was technically observational based on their observation of the human and cattle
Mm-hmm.
interaction, and and they made one cattle more venerated, and that was the venerated black cattle, which became the Apis, the Menwar, the Bacchus bull, and then ultimately because of the human cattle relationship, they found in their grammar, in their language, that these things were akin, because the Africans looked at humans in that civilization as
Mm-hmm.
herds. So we was a particular herd. So the people who lived in Kemet was a herd versus the Nahesi groups. They were a herd versus the groups out of Africa, the Canaanite groups, and those other groups that we call Assyrian, and so all these groups are herds. So they thought in cattle culture concepts, but and this was basically on naturalistic thought, uh, how nature
Mm-hmm.
works, because they looked at the insect world, they looked at the bird world, they looked at the cattle world, they looked at the lion world, they looked at and then they understood things about sacrificing, slaughtering, right? And today we got people with mumbo jumbo and saying things like the Africans did not, of that culture, did not sacrifice other human beings. Yes, they did. They want to romanticize, and that becomes problematic, because when we go up against our adversary, either we don't know enough, haven't studied enough, and you have studied. So I respect you, right? I respect the problems that you put on. Uh, but the heart of this is, uh, can you talk about science without talking about spirituality? And if you talk about spirituality, can you really just talk about the problem that they solved, right? And use their religious beliefs as a cultural element that gave them, that they connected, they had a relationship with, right? But the culture thing and the culture thing is important, but it's not the science.
Yes, sir. So I think my understanding from my understanding is this, sir. Um, as I've learned over the years, there is no African culture, traditional culture that denies spirituality, the spiritual realm. But it,
No, that's what they have taught. That's what they have taught you. But I could show you the stela of King Intef, where he laughs at Osiris. He calls Osiris the weary hearted, and he says that no man has ever come back from the death, right? No man has ever come back from death, right? And so there is this whole textual uh, how can I say, compilation called the Harper's Hymns, where the Harper's Hymns, Harper, Harper's Hymn, right? These people didn't believe uh, in the afterlife, right? And people mess up thinking that what a netter is a description of a particular phenomena, or a aspect of nature, or some animate or living, uh, but they were not gods. They were not gods. It's a classification of something but they were not gods. Now, Kemet was began being manipulated by the priest, and the priest was making money off of this
Mhm.
stuff. They was and that's one of the reasons why the civilization fell, because they were going against, they were as powerful, more powerful sometimes than the king himself.
Mhm.
So they violated their own religious situation.
Yes, sir.
Um, so now you get to a point where religion didn't work even in that
And which
culture.
and which dynasty
They're,
was this?
um, what the Harpers? The
Yes, sir. The
Harpers?
guy you said, yeah, the guy you
The
said who laughed at Asar.
Yeah. Oh, that's the Harpers hymn of Intef. So I'm thinking that's the intermediate
Okay,
period,
okay,
the first intermediate period.
okay.
Uh, this king, and so you could look it up, Harper's hymns, and you could find out all of the texts where basically they were pretty much. Uh, I hate to use the word atheist, but this whole belief in the afterlife, uh, that's not their that was not their, how can I say, their thrust. Their thrust was how to make the human on earth better, right? And the what happens in these coffin texts in the Book of the Dead and stuff like that are really um, their imagination to help the people focus on living a life of Ma'at versus Isfet, right? Usir versus Set, right? Like to be a good people, because these people didn't live long lives, 39 or 45. They was out of here, right? So, and then it was how to deal with the question of death. How do you honor? What do you say? So they formalized it. So they created things like the Hotep Dinar Sut, which is formula. It's a basic form, a formula hymn, right? So uh, applying this word spirituality as if it's, well, I have to ask you, when you say spirituality, that's what I was trying to get to. Did all Africans practice the same traditions?
Um, from no, that wasn't exactly the same. No, sir. You can't. I wouldn't say exactly the same. No, sir. And I only so I'm only pulling
Yeah.
my references is from the brother I can't think of his name right now, Jahan's the book Muntu, and when he talks about, he gets into the book Muntu. It was an eye opener for me. He it was a he it was like an encompassing of, he said basically that, it don't matter if you east, west, north, south. When you look at it, most of the people on the continent, their spiritual system is the same. They use different names and different words. However, the foundation of the spiritual system is exactly the same. So that's why I bring. I like, that's like my reference, and I think brother the elder Asante Malef Asante said the same thing. So that's why, I mean, like I said, I've been to the continent, but I've only, I've been to Ghana and
Yeah.
Ghana and Benin and Togo. I haven't been everywhere, but from just reading, um, they just saying, the spirituality, basically the spirituality is the same, but they use different words. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they have different. To say that they're the same and to not know what the differences are is is to me problematic. So there is some continuity. So there are some themes, but again, those themes are really ancestor worship. That's what humans were doing in uh, uh, primordial times. They worship their parents, right? They worship their heroes, right? then they mythology. They make myths of people that they have forgotten, and based on stories that have been forgotten until the written language. So written language now helps record real people and real things, right? And then you find kings mimicking other kings, and I'm not going to say queens because those women that were rulers were we would say we would use the word kings, but they learned from each other. The human can, so that is cultural. Now, when it comes down to fabrication, uh, building structures, that becomes a science, a technology, and then it becomes a technology, and there are, of course, science is connected to technology. But what tool has spirituality ever created? What tool?
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like we can't prove that you can't prove it that spirituality created a tool. I think I'm just saying as myself, my thoughts myself is that I think that when the ancestors tapped into the spiritual realm, they got the knowledge of how they gained the knowledge of how this is how you can move 80 tons of granite. You can do this. You know what I'm saying? They gave you
Is
the
that
knowledge.
is that spirituality, or is that just observation, hard observation, hypotheses, right? Making theories, uh, uh, experimenting, uh, and when it doesn't work, going back to the drawing board. What the hell is spirituality? I don't. I mean, people are thinking. Thinking is not spirituality. Thinking is thinking.
Yes, yes, it is.
So so a lot of the people who we learned from, there are they many of the elders that you say they were my elders, but these are real
Yes, sir.
people, and some of their thoughts was good for a particular time, but when you write a paper and you've had to, when you solve problems, you what you do is in mathematics, right? You use formulas, and you use formulas, and you use a mathematical kind of treatise. You use steps. So when you're doing trigonometry, you do a proof in trigonometry. It's been so long, but it's basically a citation of uh, a working theory,
Yes, sir.
right? That hasn't been disproved, and in trigonometry you stack it up until you solve a problem. Am I wrong?
Yes, sir. Yeah, in math, with math, most people, from my understanding, most people, mathematicians, when they want to prove something, you state your proof, you state your claim, and then you use a contradiction to try to prove it. You just use the contradiction. Um, you know,
If you are trying to prove a
yeah,
new
yeah,
theory, but if you're trying to solve a problem, if you're teaching your students a proof, right? It's what you call proofs,
yes, sir.
right? So you stack up proofs, and that's how you grade, and that's all. The problem with how we are spooked out is that we stop doing that. We start doing independent thinking without proof,
Hmm.
right? And that becomes, and then, what we do is we force our personality. So I heard something very recently that I have a problem with. Africans were here in the Americas 10,000 years ago.
Hmm.
You can say that, but what proves, or you're going to use? Who are you going to cite? And then they would say, well, you do your research. Well, okay, I've done my research. Well, what is your research, right? Mansa Musa, he is supposed to, his heir is supposed, I mean, his predecessor is supposed to have left Mali on damn, on hauled out goddamn logs, and he crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and they made it to where? They made it to the Caribbean, Barbados. Uh, uh, where did they make it to? All of a sudden, in that short period of time, they're supposed to populate uh, 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 the Americas. First, the Caribbean is huge. So how do they populate the Caribbean and the Americas in the time period of 1300, 1400, getting up to? You can't do it. That's just not true. Now, then crossing the Caribbean into the Americas, you're acting as if there were no peoples here, right? There were no peopling here, and all of a sudden they made you gods, and they list. But there's no Arabic. There's no Arabic in the Americas, in the Caribbean, because Mansa Musa and them, they well, I know Mansa Musa converted, but I know the Arabs had already that many of them were using African and Arab language, but there's no proof that any of these languages are in the Caribbean or the Americas. So now you fail with that proof because we don't have any linguistic connection. Now we now we have to look at other lenses. We have to be multi discipline. Now we have to look at to see if there's any writing, any inscriptions. Then we have to look to so we got this whole thing. They made it to Africans made it to the Grand Canyon. Like I respect my elders, but many of them didn't prepare us to really have substantial conversations against our adversary. We lose.
Mm-hmm.
We could do it in our own communities, but when it comes down to citations and proofs, right, of some of the things that we say, we can't do it. All we have is belief.
I appreciate both of the elders. Man, we about to get up out of here. I'm about to go to my album listening party. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Yeah.
Okay, so my last statement to my brother Hercules.
Yes, sir.
Right? I think that you have a great mind. I don't think that you should get mad at these people who are asking questions, because that's part of science. What you should do is articulate some things, work on, or not your articulate. I mean, work on finding the right words. You're going to solve a problem, solve the daggone problem. You don't need no spirituality. Look, is spirituality the same thing as being high? Because somebody could say, well, they got high and in a trance and stuff like that, it came to them. I mean, I'm not doing that. Don't do that. Because a lot of people will be into mushrooms, and like, we got crazies in our community. That's not how you do it. You know how you do it? By hard work, practice, learning, right? Preparation, studying, right? Problem solving. None of that shit is spirituality.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so my brother, he got to go. And
hey, Uncle Reggie, you want me to give Uncle Hercules your number?
You can give him my you can give him my phone number, you can give him my email. That's fine, because I'm with you. It's not I'm not against you. What I want you to do is, because I argue with them a lot, but I have to listen to their arguments over and over again, and I have to be better at articulating. I mean, listen, I heard the word Afrocentricity. I was around. I have the first edition of the book in my house, right? I think it's got 5 or 6 more editions to it, right? Dr. John Henry Clark wasn't Afrocentric. Dr. John Henry Clark was African-centered, right? So I had to deal with both those concepts, right? So be careful about some of these, not Amos Wilson, he's a great mind, but be careful with some of these pseudo-judos. They, even if they are great, revered, respected people, give them the respect, but what comes out of their mind, they got to source it. No source, keep it moving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. My good brother, great presentation.
All right,
Thank
hey,
you. Thank
Uncle
you.
Hercules, Uncle Reggie, y'all have a great weekend, and we